Okay, hello everybody, and welcome to the latest in the Coho BC speaker series, Land and Farm Shares, with today's guest, Brian Horwitz of Relo City Realty in the Cowichan Valley. We're delighted to have Brian here today to share his expertise and to focus on the rural land and farm aspects of co-ownership. My name is Noam Dolgan. I'm a realtor here in Vancouver and a co-founder of CoBC, and you'll learn more about me and my work as well later. So before we begin, we just want to acknowledge that we operate with a deep understanding and gratitude that we live, we work, we play, we celebrate, we build community on the unceded territories of many different peoples across the province. And we understand that when talking about land and talking about ownership of land especially, we need to understand the history of our province and land in our province. So what is Coho BC? What is the group that has brought us here today? Coho BC is an initiative that works to promote co-ownership as a viable housing option across the province of BC, to provide resources and professional support to people going through the co-ownership process, with friends, family, or others, to assist in the creation of co-ownership groups through a dating system, matchmaking, classifieds, we'll talk more about that later, a chance to help groups form around shared values and shared land and shared needs. And then down the road to facilitate the resale of these shares, to help people find partners in housing they already own, or to help succession happen in these plans ongoing. We are a collection of professionals with experience in this work, realtors such as myself and Brian, lawyers, builders, financiers and financial institutions, architects, mediators, even a matchmaker, again, all with experience in co-ownership and understanding of the complicated process that goes into creating a co-ownership situation and doing it right and doing it safely and doing it in a way that's going to be a success for everyone involved. So don't reinvent the wheel, work with the experts and help us guide you through the process from beginning to end. This is not a unique idea to BC. We are part of an international movement. Here are some examples of groups around Canada, the States, Australia, even our partners here in Victoria, shared home ownership. There's a lot of this happening because this is a real global response and a realistic response to social isolation, to increasing prices globally, and to the need to live more sustainably. So who am I as your moderator? Again, I am Noam Dolgan. I'm a realtor here in Metro Vancouver, specializing in co-ownership, sustainable living, really real homes for real people, and thinking creatively in housing. And before entering real estate, I worked in environmental education, institutional greening, and community engagement. So that's why when I got into real estate, this was clearly something that drew me. And when we hear from Brian, I think we'll hear a similar thing, that when those of us who understand community and housing and the need for a triple bottom line existence, a socially, environmentally, and economically sustainable life, can see co-ownership as really one of the best ways. So that's enough of a background. We came here today to hear from Brian about land and about and farm shares and rural settings. And so I would like to welcome Brian and thank you very much for joining us. And yeah, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Thanks, Noam. Hi, everyone. It truly is a pleasure to be part of such an amazing team here at CoBC, and I'm thrilled to be here tonight. Firstly, I'd like to say hello and welcome to everyone who is attending. I put a lot of work into this presentation, and 5 minutes ago, Noam was like, hey, maybe you should do a brief introductory about yourself. So here's my brief introductory about myself. I was born and raised in South Africa, immigrated to Edmonton with my family when I was 6 years old in February. Quite the shock indeed, as I had never experienced any type of cold in my life. Long story short, I spent most of my life in Edmonton and moved to Vancouver at the age of 30, where I met a girl, got married, had a child, and decided to make the move to a rural property in the Cowichan Valley to live in community with my friends. I've been passionate about co-purchasing real estate with like-minded people for many years, and actually do consider myself a bit of a specialist now that I've immersed myself in it at a personal level and a professional level. Life circumstances has taken me into different directions, and now my son and I live in a super cute townhouse in Duncan, where he has many friends in the neighborhood to play with. I wouldn't have asked for things to be different, and I'm very grateful to be where I am today. In tonight's discussion, I'll be talking about co-ownership on rural properties and what that can look like in its many shapes and forms. It seems through the ages that everything starts with talk. And from this talk, we take action. Coho, BC is a place where talk meets action. And I'm truly excited not only to be here tonight, but to continue to take our talk into further action for years to come. The last couple of years has been a bit of a wake-up call to everyone, and thus really has shed light on what is most important to people. Other than our health, our time, our families, and our friends, our homes seem to have taken on a whole new meaning of value. And as the world recently grinded to a halt, people were forced into their homes and onto their private properties. And as a result of this, many are re-evaluating their lives and taking a closer look on where and how they want to live and work. So many people on our planet have shifted into working from home these days. And with this shift has come a surge in demand, not only for homes and more land, but also for smaller spaces and tiny homes. Our economic demand for real estate is by far exceeding our supply. And thus, here we are in our current housing situation. That being a lack of inventory combined with high demand, which does not make things easier for people looking to buy properties. This said, when life gives one lemons, make some lemonade, or in this case, plant a lemon farm. And thus why we are all here this evening, and leads me to my first point in this presentation. Why? Our exceeding demand for real estate has made it very difficult for people looking to purchase properties. This reality check is forcing us to think outside the box. And thus, many of us are now realizing that co-purchasing is a solution to this challenge and a wonderful way to create secure housing for ourselves, our families, and our future generations. From affordability to social support to security to shared resources, co-ownership has so much to offer. And this is the so-called lemonade or lemon farm I'm referring to. For in the end, life is too short to focus on what is wrong. The time is now for us to look at solutions and keep moving in a positive direction. And another reason why Coho BC exists, that is to help people get into secure homes. Speaking to the who aspect of this slide, the first step in co-ownership is to connect with like-minded people who see eye to eye on how the property will be shared. Whether it's family, friends, or strangers, this is where it all begins. Some people already have groups in place, while others are in search of the right partners. For those looking to connect with potential co-owners, I invite you to reach out to Coho BC and spend some time filling out our matchmaking survey. This is a great route to take for those in search of connecting with potential co-owners. People need not to be weary sharing real estate with people they don't intimately know, as sometimes this can even be better than collaborating with people where there is shared history. either way, and at the end of the day, it's all about chemistry in the present moment and connecting with people who you share a common vision with. Speaking to what this actually looks like depends on the specific property and how close to proximity people want to live with each other. As properties are very unique and differ from each other, the actual percentage and form of ownership will vary depending on the characteristics of each property. As many are looking to co-purchase in small groups, others are looking to live in larger communities, and thus what each party to a group owns will be unique in itself. Where everyone involved in a co-purchase will need to share a common desire to live in the same area. As so many people share a relatively similar vision, many desire to live in different areas. This, again, is where Coho BC's large network of potential co-owners can be a wonderful resource to help bridge and connect people of a like mind looking to live in similar spaces. So how does one do something like this? Well, once again, look to your support networks. Coho BC not only connects people of a like mind, but also has all the pieces in place to properly guide groups, making sure that everything is covered in order to not only co-purchase a property, but more importantly, to thrive as co-owners for years to come. It may even seem in today's modern world that everything actually starts with a click. So I do invite all who are interested in collaborative homeownership to click and connect with Coho BC. And finally, on my first slide, and another component to look at is when. It's important for people to look closely at the reality of their situation and get clear on timelines. Preparation is essential when it comes to co-purchasing a property, and even more essential when it comes to co-purchasing a property. So the simple answer to when is once a group has their financing organized along with a well-understood co-ownership agreement in place. Preparation, slide number 2. I've come to realize over the last couple of years that the majority of people reaching out to me with the desire to co-purchase and live on a rural property share a relatively similar vision. And that is to live in a rural setting where each dwelling has a sense of privacy while having access to shared resources and common property, such as tools, a workshop, a pond, machinery, a studio, a play area for children, a large community garden, a field, a business, and the list just keeps going on. Collaborative homeownership is resonating more and more with so many people these days. And as we sit here tonight and explore this possibility of co-ownership, immediately we all share a great connection and a common will to think outside the box. At the end of the day, people want to co-purchase with others who they see eye to eye with and live harmoniously as co-owners with as little discord as possible. This is where it all begins, and that is connecting with people of a like mind. No matter who reaches out to me these days, there always seems to be some sort of hybrid between privacy and closeness. Some people are more in line with full privacy, while others are looking to live in closer proximity to each other. Co-purchasing with people desiring the same level of intimacy and privacy is a very important factor to consider. So before any type of legal agreement, there needs to be a social connection, and thus the importance of a social framework. Unified collaboration requires chemistry, and chemistry can't be forced. Even if people's profiles look like a perfect match on paper, there is no guarantee that there will be a genuine social connection. So people need to follow their heart as much as their brain and their wallet when it comes to co-purchasing a property. Connecting with Coho BC and our large network of potential co-owners, people will have the opportunity to meet one another who share similar profiles. And through our icebreaker and other group exercises, it becomes clear quite fast if there is a genuine social connection and chemistry within the group. Once a group, or partners for that matter, have a shared understanding on everyone's desires, it's time to take things to the next step. And that is getting clear on your finances. All financial components need to be taken into account when it comes to co-purchasing real estate, especially if there are loans needed, or if people are co-purchasing land with the intention to build or live in modular homes. Sharing personal and financial information is required, and people need to be honest and clear with their finances. One thing to note that I took from working in a casino many years ago that seems to resonate with me in many aspects of my life is to know your limit and play within it. Understanding the different types of housing options available to us is a great way to be open to more opportunities. From land to modular homes to carriage houses to float homes for that matter, to large homes with 2 suites. Connecting with your local Coho real estate agent is a great way to learn more of what types of housing options are available that are in line with your budget, your desired needs, and your areas of interest. Whether it's raw land, an acreage, or an income-producing farm or a business, it's crucial that groups have a clear understanding on how decisions are made along with streamlined exit strategies. Every stone needs to be turned when it comes to co-purchasing real estate, and thus it's imperative that groups connect with a real estate lawyer in order to formulate a co-ownership agreement that makes sense to everyone involved. I'd like to mention to everyone that co-ownership can seem quite daunting, yet it isn't rocket science and not that complicated. It's just very detailed. Here at Coho BC, our network of experienced real estate lawyers take hold of this fundamental component, working alongside groups, putting together these partnership agreements and organizing them in a manner that is fair, understandable, and legal. Now, one thing that can't specifically be put in co-ownership agreements before submitting offers on rural properties is the actual form of ownership. As each rural property is unique, each form of ownership will be unique and is based on the characteristics of each specific property. Yet the bulk of the partnership agreement should be done before searching for properties. So once a group finds a property of interest and agrees on what everyone will own and share, they can then confidently submit an offer, and then shortly after that, connect with their lawyer to finalize the co-ownership agreement by adding in the specific forms and percentages of what everyone owns or has rights to. Now, these partnership agreements aren't created to be used regularly. They are created to gain a clear perspective at the beginning of the process and are in place to remind and guide groups when needed. A well understood and thorough co-ownership agreement provides confidence and clarity to all parties involved, which is crucial when it's go time and the group is ready to commit. And the next slide is opportunities. Thanks, Noam. Risks versus rewards. It's interesting to see all throughout our province how unauthorized dwellings and suites are being dealt with. After numerous phone calls to regional districts and municipalities, it seems unauthorized suites and dwellings are being dealt with on an individual basis and do not get shut down unless they're being disruptive or if there are any complaints. So many properties all throughout BC have unauthorized dwellings and suites on them. This is a fact and needs to be mentioned, as it seems that comparatively speaking, there aren't many complaints happening these days. Many people living on shared land are taking the risk and reaping the rewards of lowered costs, security, social support, and more hands-on deck to manage things by having unauthorized suites and dwellings on their property. It's hard not to notice so many people are getting away with this, and it can be quite frustrating for buyers wanting to do things by the book and not being able to afford to do so, while others are taking the risks involved and building additional unauthorized suites or cabins or renting space to people who live in tiny homes, yurts, geodesic domes, or even trailers for that matter. Our regional districts are not in the business of kicking people out of their homes, as they realize we truly are reaching a breaking point in our housing situation. Now, this is a very sensitive topic and one which I personally need to be very careful talking about as a real estate professional. I am not recommending that people do this. I'm just sharing how unauthorized dwellings and suites are being dealt with by our local authorities throughout BC. If a group of people were to ever co-purchase a property with the intention to do things not by the book, in pursuit of these so-called rewards, just know that you are taking on the risk of being forced to remove any unauthorized dwellings. There are always ways to eliminate these risks by purchasing properties that are authorized or zoned for more than one home. And in my professional opinion, I recommend my clients focus on these properties. All over our planet, the need and support for local goods is prevalent. From food to alcohol, to artisan chocolate, to aquaponics, to woodworking, to farming, and the list just keeps going on. There are many rural properties that can accommodate business operations. The support for local goods is tenfold these days, and it's wonderful to see vendors do so well at local farmers markets. Many markets these days are year-long and thus provide the opportunity for people to make a living by providing local goods, to their community. Decision-making is a key component to address when it comes to co-ownership. And when groups are looking to work together in a profit dynamic on a shared property, it's best to keep the business agreement separate from the home ownership agreement. It's always best if a group has a history of working together before combining the business where everyone lives. That said, if you are part of a cohesive group that gets along well together, currently running a business in a group dynamic and finding that both the combined costs of renting business space along with paying to run homes is becoming too expensive, there is great opportunity to combine the two onto one property. Investors. This is a call out to investors both on a public level and a private level. Whether it be broadly to support co-ownership models in general or privately to support friends and family. For there are many people in our world who have very deep pockets, so to speak. And to all those who meet this criteria, I ask that you consider reaching out to Coho BC, as there is opportunity to support people on the verge of making homeownership a reality. You would have an interest on title while having your investment paid back with interest, just like any other mortgage. Investing into people's homes truly is a meaningful investment that really can make a difference in people's lives. Self-sufficiency. Living off grid is a dream to so many people these days, yet for many, living off grid on rural properties is a reality. I personally know people who live 100% off-grid in beautiful, efficient homes. You would never think some of these homes are off-grid. It's amazing what solar panels and batteries can accomplish when it comes to gathering energy, storing energy, and providing energy to run a home. Yet, most rural properties I work with and see are thankfully connected to power and have electricity, which truly is a wonderful luxury when you think of it. Yet, the more we can be self-sufficient, the less vulnerable we are when there are power failures or breakdowns in our supply chains. From composting toilets to gray water recovery systems to progressive rainwater harvesting techniques, we have the tools in place to live more sustainably in our homes and on our properties. Food security. It was quite the eye-opener seeing the grocery store shelves bare when COVID came to town. Never in my life have I seen that happen here in Canada. And it seems we've taken our food and supplies for granted over the years. And now as we venture into extreme climate conditions, we can clearly see how connected and how vulnerable our system is when our supply chains are affected. There is much fertile land for growing food and farming animals on rural properties all throughout BC. And it's amazing to see so many people expand their gardens, build new greenhouses, and acquire more farm animals. Food security is huge, and to be able to provide for yourself and your family is an opportunity and a resource like no other. The next slide focuses on forms of ownership. There really are so many rural properties all throughout BC that can accommodate collaborative home ownership, where each co-owner has a sense of privacy, yet at the same time have a rich connection with their co-owning neighbors. As each property is unique, so will the form of ownership be unique as well. No rural property is the exact same, and therefore the specific form and percentage of ownership will vary from property to property. This is a key issue to address when it comes to making offers and securing a property, as everyone needs to know what they own and what is shared. Not everyone is looking for the same type of dwelling to live in, which is kind of a good thing, as most properties with two dwellings have a larger home along with a smaller home. Many people are looking to co-purchase or wanting to move their family right into a fully functioning home, while others may be looking to live in a cabin or a carriage house, or looking for a small portion of land to put a modular home on. Matching people of a like mind, looking for different housing specifics is actually a good thing, as rural properties are usually quite asymmetric and can accommodate different forms of ownership. No matter what the percentage is, or who puts in more money in the initial purchase, it's always best for each party involved to have equal say when it comes to deciding on things. Just like it is with stratas, as the person with the biggest unit and the person with the smallest unit have an equal say in things when it comes to decision making. Many details and aspects of sharing a rural property are similar to co-owning a home in the city, yet there is much more to manage on an acreage. Acreages can be large in size and require much more hands on maintenance. Yet with more people on the property, this workload is much less daunting and can actually be quite fun. From multiple dwellings to workshops to large gardens and barns for animals and much more, acreages have so much to offer and truly are the most practical form of co-ownership I see. The financial situation of a group and the vision of a group will greatly influence on what is best when it comes to who or what actually owns the property and what name or names will be on title. Uniting under a corporation is a great way to collaborate when it comes to working with larger groups in pursuit of intentional communities or business operations. This form of home ownership and ownership is more complex than a partnership, with many details to look at. Yet having said this, there are many properties operating very successfully under the corporate model. There are both pros and cons when a corporation owns the property. Tax issues become a bit more complicated, and so is getting financing. Yet when it comes to selling portions, certain taxes can be avoided, and no names on the title need to be altered or changed. Our Coho Pro legal advisory specialists assess each group's specific situation, bringing more clarity to this when groups are considering the corporate route. Now, uniting as a group in the form of a partnership is definitely the easier route to take, especially if the group is on the smaller side looking to get a mortgage. Lenders don't usually like to see more than 4 names on title. So for small groups who need a mortgage, this is by far the most affordable and practical route to take. Land. Firstly, it's important to know that when purchasing raw land, that GST will be added to the sale price. In some rare instances, there is no GST, such as purchasing land within a co-op. As with these purchases, one would essentially own a share of the co-op with rights to the land, while the corporation would be the single name on title. Well, many people are starting to realize the value of land and are focusing on this aspect more so than on the home aspect of things. Whether looking to buy land with the intention to build homes or place modular homes on it, raw land is like a blank canvas open to so many possibilities of how the land can be lived on. The next slide is a big one, and that is zoning, which I will have a sip of water before I get to this. Zoning. This is a huge topic to unpack and could use its own webinar in its own right, yet considering it is always mentioned and one of the key components that either hinders what can be done on a property or what can't be done on a property, I feel it needs to be talked about. After connecting with progressive green building designers, there seems to be room to build homes creatively within code that can also accommodate 2 or 3 families while providing each family with relative privacy. For example, a staircase-shaped bungalow can essentially have 3 family rooms facing 3 separate yards, all under one roof. There always seems to be building restrictions, yet there is room to be creative and build within code to make it work. For example, there might need to be one big kitchen in the middle of the home. Once again, each area and site comes with its own specific building requirements. Quite a few times I've personally seen 2 homes that are attached to a carport, and I've even seen 2 homes connected by a tunnel. And thus, in both of these specific situations, these additional dwellings were added to the property legitimately and authorized by the official building inspector. And we truly are in a time of change right now where thinking outside of the box is appropriate. And all of us here tonight are looking at how to overcome obstacles while creating solutions in order to do what needs to be done to safely create this collaborative form of home ownership. Another topic to note is the recent increase in housing flexibility within our agricultural land reserve that the Agricultural Land Commission granted as of July 2021. Now, the Agricultural Land Commission is the provincial authority overlooking British Columbia's ALR lands. Now, this easing of housing flexibility granted by the ALC allows property owners in the ALR to have an additional residence on their property that does not have to be farm related. Not everyone living within the ALR are farmers, and thus the reasoning for this increase in housing flexibility. Yet, having said this, the Agricultural Land Commission does not make decisions at the city level. It is up to our municipalities and regional districts if they will allow for this increase in housing flexibility to unfold in our specific areas. So I highly encourage all ALR landowners to call their regional districts to inquire about this as the Agricultural Land Commission has given our regional districts the authority to allow for this to unfold. Zoning amendments. Getting a zoning amendment can take a long time and requires patience and the understanding that the amendment may not be approved. From knowing who to talk to and when to talk to, for that matter, all comes into play when it comes to getting a zoning amendment underway. As of now, zoning amendments are usually approached on a site-specific basis. Site-specific zoning amendments are a lot smoother for existing landowners as the land is already secured. Yet for buyers looking to secure properties subject to a zoning amendment is almost impossible to accomplish in today's market. Considering our municipalities put so much time and energy into site-specific zoning amendments, certain general zoning amendments would be a game changer for all and create many win-win situations, both for our regional districts, our local economies, and families who need secure homes. From intentional communities to mobile home parks, there are certain properties zoned throughout our province that allow for higher density living on rural properties. These properties rarely come to market, yet when they do, they sell very quickly. Speaking more to mobile home parks, it's unfortunate to see so many of these homes deteriorate, as the majority of these outdated manufactured homes were not built to be permanent dwellings within our Pacific Northwest's wet and humid climate. All over British Columbia, there are manufactured homes and mobile home parks that are in terrible condition. Yet when I see tiny homes, it's clear these little homes are built to last, more like a permanent dwelling. Yet at this point in time, BC does not legally allow tiny homes, yurts, or geodesic domes to be considered a legal permanent residence, even while there are thousands of people living sustainably in these alternative homes very successfully all year throughout the province, staying warm and dry in the winter while having all the necessities a permanent dwelling has to offer. I personally know many people who live in yurts, tiny homes, and geodesic domes who had no problems with this year's troubling winter storms. So as we rethink, rebuild, and create a new future that is more sustainable and resilient, I dream of seeing tiny home villages flourishing all throughout our province. So how do we advocate and make change? After my talks with our regional districts and municipalities, I've come to realize that all the phone calls inquiring about zoning amendments don't have much influence in expediting things, as these phone calls do not go on record and do not equate to petitioning. They're just phone calls that come and go. Many of our regional districts and municipalities are on board for making change and truly are inviting us to advocate and petition council. Yet nothing gets done without action. And for those wanting to see general amendments happen sooner than later, it is up to us to voice our concerns. So specifically, what we can do is advocate to our municipalities and speak at their meetings and focus on current issues, such as a lack of housing, food security, cultural diversity, education, sustainability, and affordability. Now, it's easy enough to go to our regional districts' websites and fill out the appropriate form, which allows for one to speak on record for 10 minutes at council meetings. I implore that those of you wanting to support zoning amendments to step up to the plate and voice your concern on record, as doing so truly will make a difference. With pressure from the people, this change will happen sooner rather than later. And that leads me to my next slide, which is making it happen. Whether you have a group in place or looking to connect with like-minded people, connecting with Coho BC is a great place to start the process. We are here to make this happen. Groups need to have chemistry and see eye to eye on the fundamentals of what everyone is envisioning. As well, a group of partners needs to share similar timelines and desired areas of interest, while having a clear understanding of the financial capability within all parties involved. Once this has been accomplished, it is time to connect with the lawyer to create the co-ownership agreement, getting clear on all the specifics involved. The co-ownership agreement provides clarity to all involved, and with this clarity, groups can confidently start submitting offers on properties of interest. What to look for? Properties that have been on the market for a long time can actually be a good thing at times, as the frenzy for multiple offers doesn't exist on these listings, allowing for buyers to have a bit of an advantage regarding subject removal dates and offer price. As we are here exploring co-ownership, it makes sense to look for properties that already have multiple dwellings on them. Some of these properties are operating in a non-conforming manner that have a grandfather clause, allowing the property to continue to operate in its current form while being exempt from certain zoning regulations. These types of properties are great for co-owning. Other things to look for would be properties that are subdividable or zoned for multiple dwellings. For people looking to explore the possibility of co-purchasing land with the intention to place modular homes on the property, it's reassuring to know that there are properties out there that do allow for 2 modular homes. And it truly is exciting to see so many high quality modular homes being built for full-time living these days that meet the required CSA approval standards. Currently, there are many active listings right now all throughout BC that have multiple dwellings. We all know the good ones go fast, and that's why it's so crucial being prepared and ready when that perfect property comes to market. For example, in mid-January of this year, a 5-acre parcel sold for just under $1.5 million. This property had 6 bedrooms, 6 bathrooms, 3 kitchens, and a workshop, not to mention a hot tub and a pool table in the main house. The main house has 3 bedrooms and 2 full bathrooms on the upper level, with a separate suite below with its own entrance that has 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom. The large workshop has a fully functioning 1-bedroom suite above it. A property like this between 3 parties would work great. Now, speaking to another active current listing right now, there is a co-op on Lasqueti Island selling 10-acre sites for $225,000 per site. Considering these sites are within a co-op, there is no GST applicable to these sales, which is great. So for those looking to live remotely and off-grid on a beautiful Gulf island, this could be something to look at. There are 10 sites within this co-op, and they are selling fast. I've done my research on these and connected with the listing agent, so please feel free to reach out if you would like any more information on these specifics. Off-market properties. This is a call out to current landowners who have the capacity to legally have another dwelling on your property. There's great opportunity for existing landowners to sell a portion of their property and gain access to their equity, build community, and stay in their home. Now, we here at Coho BC are devoting our energy into this cause to make change. And by brokering private deals or by navigating public listings, we are here to support win-win situations where all parties benefit. Let the search begin. Once agreements are in place and everyone has a firm understanding of the group's financial position, groups will have accomplished the majority of the legwork regarding their partnership agreement and will now be prepared and ready to purchase a property. Looking at properties is exciting, and at this point, groups can confidently submit offers, knowing they have done their due diligence and are set for success. This is where I invite you to use Coho BC real estate agents in our specific areas of expertise to guide you from beginning to end and handle this final and integral piece of your co-purchasing journey. For once a co-purchase has been accomplished, this process is over and the group immediately transforms into co-owners. This is a very exciting nexus point and deserves great celebration. And now to summarize and wrap things up. Talk leads to action. Action leads to being prepared. Preparation leads to success. Collaborative co-ownership has so much potential. We here at Coho BC are ready to connect people of a like mind and take talk to the next level through a formula-driven approach, step by step, assisting groups through the process, making sure all the necessary pieces are in place in order to be fully prepared for when preparation meets opportunity, the future truly is bright. It's been an honor being here tonight with you all and a pleasure sharing this valuable information with you. Thank you so much.
Wow. Thank you, Brian. That was really a thorough presentation covering a lot of areas. I'm sure there will be questions from the audience. So I'm going to open up the chat and allow folks to unmute themselves. And if people want to ask Brian some questions, I encourage you to chime in. Thank you. I guess I have one to start while people are thinking about their stuff. You mentioned, you talk a little bit about small homes versus modular dwellings. And I guess some of the small homes would be temporary on wheels. Can you talk a little bit about these different types of construction and why some might be authorized and some might not be?
Well, now when you say small homes, are you talking specifically tiny homes on wheels?
I guess tiny homes in this case, yeah.
Right. So tiny homes, they're not considered authorized dwellings. An authorized dwelling needs to be appropriately fastened to a foundation. So, but having said that, I have friends who are full-time builders here in Cowichan, and they build homes for a living, and it's not that much different. So when you go into these homes, they're so efficient, they're insulated, they're inviting, they're healthy, there's no mold. And I'm noticing people who are moving out of bigger homes that do have mold issues, that are moving to tiny homes, have a whole new outlook on life. And there's probably a few people in here tonight with us that are living in tiny homes very happily and successfully. So I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, thank you. So we do have a couple of questions that have come in here. First off, just a few housekeeping things. This recording will be available and sent out to you online after the fact, so you can look at it again or share it with others. Brian, people have asked if you can share your notes as well. Can we send those out with the follow-up email?
Absolutely. Now, when you say notes, the slides?
No, the things that you were reading off of your conversation.
Oh, my whole presentation.
Yeah.
Well, let me be with that. Let me be with that, and I can get back to you on that. I would prefer that whoever's asking that question to call me and we can talk. I would prefer that. Yeah.
Fantastic. So here's a good basic question. What are some of the problems, challenges presented with co-ownership?
Well, honestly, it's uncertainties. There's all these looming uncertainties where people they just think they can't do it. And here I am. I live in strata. I've lived in stratas all my life, and it's not that much different. I have strata bylaws, So it's getting all the uncertainties addressed. What happens when people pass away? How are estate issues dealt with? What happens if people aren't paying their share of the mortgage? So these are looming uncertainties that can be answered with our lawyers. So once you get answers to all of these looming uncertainties, you're like, oh, that's what we do in that situation. Oh, that's what we do in that situation. Oh, so that's what happens when that person passes away and how the estate is dealt with. So that's the key thing, in my opinion, that's hindering and kind of scaring people away. Oh, I wouldn't want to like buy a home with anyone else. There's lots of people like that that are blocked, and we wouldn't want to purchase with people like that. We want to purchase people who are open, who like talking to their neighbors. So to summarize, it's addressing all the uncertainties. You meet with the lawyer, you ask those uncertainties, you get your answers to your uncertainties, and all of a sudden you're aware of what happens at those times.
I think that's a great answer. And I was going to add to it, I think that the things people are most scared about in this conversation are about financing and exit, right? What happens if someone doesn't pay their bills and I'm on the hook for their money and their mortgage? And clearly the legal agreement deals with that. Hopefully they have enough of a down payment down that protects you as well. You've made a good real estate purchase, but so protecting your financial interest is a major part of that agreement. And then exit strategy. What happens when I want to leave or a partner wants to leave? How do I protect myself if I want out or if I want to stay? And we have all sorts of other presentations and conversations about what those agreements look like that we're not going to go into today, but those are really how we attempt to address those challenges. I see more questions coming up and I appreciate them. I'm going to get back to them in a minute. I just want to get on and let people know that there are a lot of resources on this available online. I recommend starting with the Coho BC Guide to Co-Ownership on our resources page. We have questions for partnership agreements and examples of that. On our YouTube channel will be this presentation along with many others from lawyers and financiers and builders and mediators and all sorts of things. So really, if you're looking to get to understand more, there's a lot more there. You please do schedule a consultation. Someone asked for email addresses. They're right here and they'll appear on the last slide as well. So reach out to Coho BC generally. Reach out to Brian if you're in the Cowichan Valley. Reach out to myself if you're in Metro Vancouver. We also have on the call Dave and Judy Hale, who are the Coho Realtors in Victoria. So we are happy to help explain the process, guide you through the process, compare what you can get with traditional ownership versus what you can get with co-ownership and why it makes a lot of sense. As I said, this is part of a series of events. So please do sign up for future events. We have our Let's Make a Coho matchmaking evening, which happens every 2 months in April and again in June. We have our intro session to what is co-ownership and how can it work for me, which Brian went through a lot of that stuff here today. We'll go into a little more detail about what goes into a partnership agreement and to some more urban examples of housing and scenarios. We have an event in May with conversations with co-owners where people who have bought together and are living together talk about their experience. So please encourage you to sign up. You've all been added to our newsletter. Hopefully you choose to stay. And please do join us for future events. Brian has made reference to our matchmaking opportunities. If you have a group ready to go, we'll guide you through. But if you don't, we do have a professional matchmaker we've hired recently, Liz, who will work with you and connect people in your community. So please fill out the partner survey on our website, visit our classifieds page, and then if you fill out either of those 2 forms there, Liz will reach out to you. Here's a couple examples of some land and farm shares that we have people looking for at the moment on the Sunshine Coast and in the Okanagan. And I'm sure Brian has many connections through the Cowichan Valley as well. So this is happening across the province, and we're here to help you guys get it done. So again, thank you all for joining us. My name is Noam. Brian, thank you so much for your time and expertise today. Please do reach out to us just follow us on social media, and we'll go back to the chat and see what other questions have come up. So a number of compliments for you, Brian, on a great presentation. Thank you for doing this.
My pleasure. And sorry to interrupt, but as soon as I started becoming a real estate agent, I have it was like when I worked in the casino, I had an existential relationship working in this dark place that like ruined people's lives. But I brought positive energy to that place, and I helped people actually leave the casino. And so I have an existential relationship being a real estate agent, and here we are helping people buy and sell stolen land. No one actually owns land. So that's something that people really need to realize. We own our homes, but the earth owns the land. So here we are, people spending exorbitant amounts of money on real estate. And there's lots of people who are fortunate enough to do that, but many of us aren't fortunate enough to do that. So my goal as a real estate agent is to make a change for the better, to support co-purchasing. And I've been doing it on my own for the last 2 years. And then you and I just connected. And now that I've connected with Coho BC, I feel like this like army of like peaceful warriors now. So I feel like it's a nexus point. And I digress. Let's jump back into the questions.
Thank you. So a question here, is it true that you have to pay 50% or more down for raw land? And the basic answer is yes. Brian, do you have anything more to say about that?
No, you can get finance up to 70% on land with the right lender. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's my understanding as well. But yeah, so it doesn't have the same CMHC and 5% and 20% down. You definitely need to have more cash down for raw land.
Absolutely.
Speaking
to that, sorry to interrupt, but speaking to that, there are lenders who on a personal level, I was with a group and we nearly secured a large portion of land, and the lenders were ready to lend us 70% for land, and they were ready to finance 100% to help build roads and put in hydro poles.
Oh, great.
So the support is there.
All right. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
We have Maureen, who said a couple of years ago she tried to find a lawyer who knew how to do this. Are there people who have stepped up to this trend? And the answer is, I maybe Brian, you can talk to the Cowichan, but there are a number of lawyers who we work with across the province. A couple in Vancouver, 3 in Vancouver we know have experience with this. 1 in Victoria. And of course, the lawyer doesn't have to be local. It's more important that they understand the questions to ask and the right contract, because any lawyer will tell you they can write a partnership agreement. They've done them for businesses, they've done it for other purposes, but a cohabitation co-ownership agreement is much more complicated. So Brian, I don't know if you have a local lawyer you use as well, but there's definitely a number I know of around the province that are part of the Coho team.
You know what, I do. I have connected with a couple local lawyers, and they're great guys, and they're ready to like jump on board. But speaking to what you were just talking about, they don't have the experience as many other lawyers in different areas do. And now that we can sign documents and do everything kind of virtually, as much as I want to support my local community, I also want to make sure that people co-purchasing real estate are being guided by experienced professionals that aren't going to charge money to go research. The research is already done, right? So a lot of these lawyers that are willing to jump on board and do this, they still have to learn. And as much as I want to support them, I recommend people using experienced real estate lawyers wherever they may be.
Mike asks, how does home insurance and property insurance work with co-ownership? And the basic answer is it works the same way it would work generally until you get to too many people. And then it's one of the reasons why you might go to a corporate model at that point. Brian was talking about the different pros and cons of partnership versus corporate and co-op models. And insurance is one of those. When you are, 4 people on a property, generally insurance isn't a hard thing to get. You just go and buy it like you would normally. When you start getting into those larger numbers, it starts to confuse the insurance companies. And that's where being in a corporate model often is an easier easier to insure. Is that your experience too, Brian?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. At first, when I got into that, I was just recommending everyone do it under the corporate model, do it under the corporate model. And as I unpacked that further, I realized, for smaller groups, the corporate model isn't the best route to take.
Can someone be a co-owner if they only have a sum of money and cannot get a mortgage? This is always an interesting challenge. I mean, the basic answer is yes and no, right? If you can find the right community and the right support of other people who can carry you and want you in your community for other things that you bring to the community, whether it be ongoing costs to pay for your share or social costs or whatever, and you can create a unique legal and ownership structure around your situation, and the rest of the group can carry the mortgage, etc., and you're not going to be a detriment. You haven't recently declared bankruptcy or something that might destroy everyone's ability to get a mortgage. Sure. But certainly most people are looking for partners who are going to come with enough money and enough mortgageability to complement them and support them and get them to where they need to be. So it really depends on your situation. Brian also made a call out at some point to investors, and we have models like recently Coho put people together in Horseshoe Bay in 8 cottages, 8 small homes on 3 properties. And in that model, we had investors that allowed for people to get in at different levels of mortgageability and of ownership stakes. So there are some creative options. There's also some private companies out there now, groups like Key Investing, which have a different model, but where they will co-own properties with you. You can get in as low as 2.5%. So there are versions of it. Again, the whole thing's about threading a needle, right? Finding the right team, the right partnership, the right property, you bringing the right things that it makes sense for you guys all to work together.
Yeah, Noam, even with our brief discussion today, when you told me how it can be worked, speaking to that question, where what you both own the property, but one person has a higher stake within that property, and therefore you're co-owners, and at the same time have a landlord-tenancy relationship as well.
Yeah, so you can separate your ownership stake from your occupancy stake. And so you own a small amount, but you pay for the space that you use, and you are kind of like a rent to own model. And then someone else is kind of like both, a bit of a landlord making a little extra money by their investment. So there's creative options that are out there. Can additional land partners be brought on board at a future date to one property? I mean, absolutely. We are always here to help facilitate the sale of, and get new people on board with you, if that makes sense. There might be property transfer tax. There might be the need to reassign a mortgage, which comes with costs and challenges. It really depends on your situation and your legal structure. Again, if you're a corporation or a co-op, it's easier to transfer shares versus if you are multiple names on title. If people can own vacation trailers and store them on their land, could people do this on rural land? When does this become a zoning violation? I'm talking about tiny homes or RVs and things like that. Can you explain this a little more?
It's such a gray area, even my new neighbor, he's like, yeah, I'm putting a tiny home and a tenant on my property. I'm like, well, that's unauthorized. He's like, it's a trailer. It's just a trailer. And it's just such a gray area. So, if we don't have bylaw officers driving around with their laser shutting people down. So yeah, technically there would be a zoning infraction, if it were to be lived in full time. So that's the thing with these trailers. They're allowed to be lived in part time, but legally they're not supposed to be lived in all year round. So does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think you did. Thank you. Hey, Brian. Okay, hold on. Just going down this. I think a lot of thank yous, great presentations. Looking forward to meeting you. Fantastic. Again, please do follow up with us. Coho personally, etc. I am a landowner of acreage and would like to connect with interested parties. Again, how do we go about doing this? Meeting coming up. Exactly. So if you are someone who owns property, please do reach out to Coho. We'd set up a conversation. We'd understand what your property is. We would connect you to Liz, who I actually is here with us, and maybe we'll get her to introduce herself as well. And we would then put together a classified and a marketing strategy to find people interested in your property, and then then of course you would date them, you would interview them, you get to know them and make sure they're a good fit. You would go through the process of talking to lawyers and partnership agreements and all the same process in the same capacity. So that's if you're a homeowner. And then of course if you're looking for land, we would partner you up with other people looking for similar land, and help bring you through the buyer process. So please do reach out to us, and we'll set up a conversation to talk about your specific situation. Next one here. Can you talk about ways that you have seen housing cooperatives share access to housing and redistribute housing security to Indigenous folks who are leading the fight against capitalism and colonialism, but whom suffer from some of the worst housing security and often on their own unceded lands? Great question.
Well, yeah, that deserves a whole ceremony in itself of like intention, and like that's a big one. Noam, you want to speak to that?
I mean, unfortunately, certainly for Indigenous folks and in general for trying to create mixed communities, rental housing mixed into some of these communities instead of just ownership. And so there are some small scale private initiatives where people have kind of bought a house and brought other people to co-buy it with them, and then opened up rooms and were able to create rooms that were, at a lower rental cost for members of the community. There is some co-housing initiatives that have been required by law to put rental suites in, and sometimes to require those to be below market rentals. And there's a lot of talk in the co-housing community broadly about ways of trying to do a development that's both owner occupier and renters, and hopefully a portion market rental and a portion below market rental. And maybe it would be great to work in combination with Indigenous communities. So I haven't seen this succeeded on a large scale, but especially I think in some of these lands owned by municipalities who are now going through the effort of trying to make those lands accessible for affordable housing, make those lands, develop them in partnership with the Indigenous communities in those areas. I think it'd be great to partner up with some of those and try to build these types of communities and mix a mix of housing of all types.
That's a dream of mine, to see more cultural diversity on properties. It's like especially tiny home villages. There's actually a little under the radar tiny home village here in Cowichan on reserve land, and everyone's living peacefully off grid, and it's beautiful, because there's people who are like desperate, who needed a place to live, and there they are living together in harmony on reserve land, and it truly is beautiful.
So some asks about cost. Clearly there are costs to these services. And we do need to feed our family and pay for the matchmaker and all that kind of stuff. Again, when you follow up with us and talk about your situation, we can talk about the costs. Sometimes the costs are taken care of by third parties, like in real estate transactions where you're buying and the seller might pay a portion or all of the cost. Sometimes they'll have to be incurred by you, but we try to make it reasonable. But also, we need to charge enough to make this viable, this organization viable, and grow and promote this to other people.
Now, no, I'm speaking to that. If we were to represent just a group of people, they obviously they're going to pay legal fees, correct? Get all that organized and the agreements in place, and we represent the buyers, and they purchase a property. Would there be a charge to the group other than their administration fees with the lawyer and such?
Again, we'll have to look at your specific situation and whether there's matchmaking involved in other elements. But if there's enough being paid by the third party to cover our basic costs, then we would not come after you additionally as well.
Right. And by third party, you're talking about the seller.
The seller in this case.
Absolutely.
There was a, oh, here's a nice answer to the earlier question. There was a homeowner in Oak Bay who donated a property back to the Songhees Nation, I believe. This would be a great beginning for Indigenous co-housing. So yeah, I mean, there's unfortunately so much of it relies on the kindness of individuals, and it shouldn't. It should be more systemic, as a systemic response to all the systemic problems. But yeah, it's always nice to hear about some of those options. I think that brings us to the bottom of our comments. If I missed yours, please throw it back up again or unmute. In general, again, I encourage you to come back to the future events, to look at the past videos, which have a lot of the stuff, to read the guide to co-ownership, and to follow up with us and talk about your specific situation, and we can help you out. Do you have a site where homeowners can give descriptions of property for interested parties to respond to? Yes, so that's the classifieds page. And people have also sold shares of their property through MLS as well. There's a number of models that we can talk about how to find the right partners. But yes, the classifieds page would be the place where both buyers looking to team up and also sellers looking to find partners can advertise. And then of course, Liz, again, who would be our matchmaker, would be working with you to find the right people to connect with. So again, thank you all so much. Thank you, Brian, for really a thorough and effective presentation, and for clearly putting in a lot of thought and energy into doing it well.
Thank you.
And we are delighted to have you on the Coho team. Your passion is clear, your knowledge is clear, and we look forward to doing many more rural and urban co-ownership deals with you and with the many people who came here today. Thank you, everybody. It was a really great turnout and great enthusiasm. And may peace be with all of you.
Well, there's Liz.
Yeah, sorry, just a quick hi right at the end. But thanks, Noam, and thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Liz.
Okay.
All right. Thanks again, everyone.